today I'm truly excited, to welcome two wonderful and esteemed speakers of ours. They just landed down here in KL, all the way from Sabah, I think about an hour ago, right? Deborah and Terence, right? So amazing to have them here. Wow, that's awesome. We just can't wait to hear them speak. But anyway, before that, just want to introduce a little bit about Terence and Deborah. Now, they are really passionate about developing people and living these missional lives. They were having thriving careers. I think Terence, you were in the digital and media industry for 10 over years. And he actually graduated with a master's in sustainable development. And not only that, Deborah was actually in mass communication and have a double major in journalism and cultural studies. And I think her work has actually spanned across from New York, from the ghettos of New York, and spanned across Asia and beyond. It is so exciting. But in 2014, they actually took a leap of faith and actually gave up their very thriving careers to actually go to the mission field in Cambodia to be missionaries. And there they had worked with NGOs, starting literacy centers, doing impactful voluntary programs. It is just amazing. Can't wait to hear them elaborate on that. After that, 2 years later, they came back to Malaysia, Sabah, alright, not Kuala Lumpur, but Sabah, right? And they actually worked and collaborated with an NGO in starting a hostel, enhancing educational access to a lot of rural students. Now, after that, from there, in 2020, they came back to corporate work again, but this time with a mission. They are co-founders of Wiki Impact and also Faith Hour. Wiki Impact is actually a platform that actually elaborate and also talk about social and environmental issues. And Faith Hours is a platform that really encourages all the Christians to live out their faith. And now they are rooted in Sabah. And do you know which church they are from?
Exactly. Skyline.
Skyline, yes. Awesome. Woo-hoo. So good, right? We have all dear brothers and sisters from SIB just to come over here to speak to us. Isn't it exciting? They have a wonderful family, which they have two beautiful children called Seth and Enya, right? And last but not least, alright, Deborah is amazing, she even co-author, she write a book, right? She's a freelancer, right, in writing. And she has actually wrote a book called Live to Last, if I'm not mistaken. And she has some books here, alright? So after this, grab a book, ask us to sign the autograph, most important of all, alright? So grab a book before you leave, alright? Because it is a compelling memoir that inspire young adults, alright, to live a life, that create changes, meaningful changes in their path and in their journey. So without further ado, let's put our hands together and give a warm welcome.
Hi everyone. Hi. I'm Terence. This is my wife Deborah.
Hey.
We just got down. 4:30, the flight touchdown at KLIA, and with KL traffic. So we just dropped our children at the grandma's place, and then we just drove here. Thank God everything went smoothly, and we can be here with you. So greetings from the land beneath the wind, Sabah. Come on. So, some of you have been to Sabah before. Yeah. Nice.
Okay.
The rest of you will pray for you, okay, after this.
If you have not, please do.
Sabah, to us, Sabah is one of the most beautiful places probably the most beautiful place in Malaysia.
Amen.
So we are actually from here, from KL, Selangor, right? And then 2013, we felt the Lord's call in our lives, and then thereafter we went to the mission field, as Christina mentioned. We should share shortly. So the images all up, right? So what happened was so this is us, our two children. 2013, the Lord, we felt a very strong call that the Lord spoke to us and said, pack your bags. And I'm like, pack my bags? In fact, I was like, when we heard the voice, pack your bags, we were like, in Jesus' name, I cast that out, that kind of thing. Because it was 2 years prior to that, we always speak to and pray at the end of the year, and we said, there were a couple of times when I told her, I said, come, I think it's time to go to the mission field. But it never sat right, the timing never sat right until 2013, when the Lord clearly said to us to pack our bags. I said, there's no chance, Lord, there's no chance. Why? We just had a 3-month-old baby, first kid. Both our bosses came to us and said that by the end of the year, you will get a promotion. There will be an increase in your capacity as well as your salary and whatever package and whatever not. But how many of you know that sometimes when God calls, God also requires that obedience? It was tough, but we said, okay, Lord, we will follow, we will push through. So 2014, we left to Cambodia. We lived in a place called Barambong. We'll show you some pictures shortly. For 2 years, we raised our own funds, and it's something we're not used to. Right? We are not used to raising our own funds. We're not used to, live a life as a quote-unquote missionary. But missions has always been close to our hearts. We've always been traveling, leading mission teams 10, 15 years since I was a teenager, and then started leading mission teams right up to when we moved to the field. End of 2015, when we were praying, we said, okay, I think our time in Cambodia is up. Let's go back to Malaysia. And then so we were seeking the Lord and we were praying. And 2 words were dropped in our spirit. The first word is, your season in Cambodia was just a training ground. And we were like, Lord, all this suffering just for training, all this that we've traveled from KL to Cambodia and lived a life of a mission field, all this is only for training? I said, cannot be. But then we said, okay, let's see. But how many of you know that every season of our lives actually a training and preparation for the next? The other word that the Lord dropped on our spirit was the word nation building. So it was training ground and nation building. He said, the next thing that I'm going to call the both of you in is to build your own country. 2 days later, after that word, we got a random phone call. Random, but with God, nothing is random. We got a call. And somebody said, we are just starting an NGO in Sabah. Would you like to come? Come and visit this place called Kota Marudu. We didn't even know the word Kota Marudu existed in the dictionary in Malaysia. Right? It's our first time hearing that word. And lo and behold, it's one of the poorest places in Malaysia. And long story short, we'll show you a few things later. We ended up there. So I would say we are a bit of an accidental missionaries. Just because we went to the mission field and then sometimes we visit churches at the time, people were starting to introduce us as missionaries. These guys, they go on the field. I honestly, until today, don't even know how to feel about it. But there were a couple of things that in the mission field we had to both learn and unlearn. How many of you know actually the harder thing to do is actually to unlearn? Learning is actually easier, To unlearn things in our lives, something that we are so used to, conditioned to, it's a really difficult thing. So a couple of things we have to unlearn. The first is the meaning of church. This was church for us for 2 years. We find the biggest tree, a tree with a couple of wooden benches, and we will have church then. There are days when I question God, Lord, what are we doing? What on earth am I doing here? Why do I have to ride my motorcycle for 3 hours and then arrive here and do church? This has no meaning. This is not church. And the Lord had to challenge me. What is your actual definition of church? Then I realized, for 2 weeks, being there, we realized that it is not about the building, but it's about us, the people. And that was a total mind shift. It's easy to say, friends. It's easy to say I'm the church, Very easy to say. But to live it out, it is hard. And to live it out in your offices is hard. To live it out in universities and campuses, it's not easy, right? Sometimes we think church has to be a place like this. The other thing that we had to unlearn was what is worship. Because when we go there, when we sing the songs, we don't understand a single word. Maybe there are certain melodies that we could follow, but we just couldn't relate. We couldn't quote-unquote worship. And there, for 2 years, God had to help us to unlearn the meaning of worship, because work, fellowship, meeting people is worship. And that was a total mind shift that we had to do. So my background is in the media space. For the first, since I graduated, I have worked in startups. And my last startup before I left KL was I worked with, say, some of your friends from SID KL. So we were one of the founding team that created Says.com, and I was probably the first 7 or first 8 group that created. And at the brink of my so-called resignation or leaving Malaysia, my bosses came to me and said, we are going to be bought over by another company, in fact, Media Prima, said, we want you to carry on. I said, okay, I tell you what, let me resign proper, but I'll come back, right? I'll come back. Of course, I never did. So my bosses said, the chair and the table will always be there for you, you just need to come back. So that was the promise both her boss and my boss gave us. So we had kind of that assurance, right?
And so very similar. My boss was actually gave me a lot of favor, and I grew in the company as I started as a comms person, but then eventually I grew into sustainability. And actually, that job which I left before I left for Cambodia was my dream job. How many of you love to travel here? I'm guessing like most of you would like to travel and see the world, right? My deepest passion, one of my deepest passion is really just to see the world, because there's so much to learn, right? When you are out there and you learn how different people live and different cultures. I love to travel. And so this particular job that I had to leave, I was in a sustainability line focusing on travel. And I got to go to places like the Maldives where, a private charter plane would land me on the island. Actually not on the island, an open sea with a floating airport in the middle of the sea, and then a private boat would take me to an island in the name of work, and I would do reports and assessments. I'll go to places like Sri Lanka and other like exotic places, all for the name of work and all paid for. And so when the Lord called us to Cambodia, I really had to question and ask, is this the right move to go? That was one of the things that I had to kind of like tussle with God, right? The other one was also, we had just started a family, and we became new parents to our firstborn son, Seth, and he was also the first grandchild to our families. And so once you start a family and everybody's really happy that there's a baby in the house, grandparents, if you're here, and some of you may be grandparents, you would understand. It's like, why does my child have to leave? And my grandchild as well. And so we had to really, kind of wrestle with God. Is this really the move that you want us to go or not? To leave a place that we have grown up in, Kuala Lumpur, PJ, that, almost all our lives, and to go to Cambodia, and not just to a city in Cambodia, it was to a kampong called Battambang. But we traded really. Now that we look back, there is nothing that could, outpay what we said yes to God for, right? Once we said yes to God, this was what we said yes to God.
So, on the picture on your left is literally me riding 2 to 3 hours every Sunday, sometimes Saturday and Sunday to churches. And that is how our church looked like, right? There are days when, I remember there was once we were on that dirt road. In fact, this is considered good because it's, we had sun, but when it rains, it's bad. Of course, when it rains, I can't take pictures and stuff. When it rains, it's really bad. Then there was one day where I just wanted to give up. She was at home taking care of the baby. I was in the middle of the road, probably going to the second church, and the tire punctured, the motorbike tire punctured, just me and my translator. And I just looked to the heavens. I said, Lord, is that all that is? You brought me here to suffer, and just like this, I can say I was shouting, because there's no one around me. I was just shouting to the heavens. And I said, Lord, this is me being entitled then. I said, Lord, my parents paid for my degree. I started listing, I serve you in church. I did this for you. I did this, and you bring me here to suffer? Sorry, can I just be entitled for a while? But that was then. So God really had to break me to break us. In the middle of the road. And the Lord said that, I felt very strong sense is, say, go and search your Bible. What is the true meaning of church? Because I said, this cannot be. It's impossible. I go there, I share the word, nobody even understands. I don't even know if they understand. So that's where we came back, we processed things, and then the Lord began to download. And then we were able to release and unlearn all those baggages that we carried. Today is free. We always tell young people when we share our story, we say, obedience doesn't restrict, it releases. We want our young people to know that actually obedience to God is not restricting. Obedience to God, the true obedience to God actually frees you. Today we feel very free because we walk in the obedience of God. It's not a bunch of rules that we need to follow, but it's so free to be in God's purpose and in God's destiny. And then from there, we went to Sabah. So, doesn't look like, I can even show you this, without saying anything, this can even look like Cambodia, right? So for us, the change of country had no difference for us. We were literally still living amongst the poor, right? Where was this?
This was in Kudat, Pitas, and maybe if I can just rewind a little bit. And so we spent 2 years in Cambodia,
Sure.
and we were building literacy centers in the rural parts of Cambodia. And because religion is still a sticky subject, right, there, you can't actually build churches per se. And so because we were in rural areas, there was a gap with education, and there was also a lack of churches. And so what we did was we built literacy centers where children could be taught during the weekdays, where tutors will hire tutors to come in to teach them. And then on weekends, it would be turned into a community center/church. And so we were there for 2 years.
Yeah.
And after 2 years, we thought we'll go back to KL, come back to
Yeah.
KL and resume our jobs, because our bosses had already said, you can come back anytime, we'll find a position for you. And so that was in our mind. But as we sought the Lord, which we do actually every year, Lord, where do you want us, right? Then God said, nation building, go back to Malaysia. Then we're like, okay, sure, we'll come back to KL and we'll work in a social enterprise or work in an NGO in KL, and we'll nation build. But then lo and behold, a door opened up in Sabah for us, and it was never in our cards. Like in our mind, Sabah was never going to be home, like it was only going to be a destination. We've gone there for holidays. We've never seen it as a home before. But when we went there, our first visit to Sabah, God broke our hearts, like deep down. This is some scenes of what we saw, but as we were looking at those scenes, this is somewhere in Pitas, and Sabah happens to be, at that time we didn't know, after that we had to do our research. The place that we were working at the moment, at that time, is the north part of Sabah, which is Kudat, Pitas, and Kota Marudu. Incidentally, they are also the poorest districts in the whole of Malaysia, where many households actually earn less than 500 ringgit. And households meaning, right, if you know orang kampung, they don't only have one child, they have like more than 2, 3, 4, 5 children, and they're earning like 500 and less. And
so the fun fact about this is that the top 20 poorest districts in Malaysia, right? 17 of them comes from Sabah, 1 come from Sarawak, and 2 come from West Malaysia. Top 20, even until today. That's the kind of poverty, that snapshot that we faced when we arrived.
And so one of the issues actually in rural Sabah is the access to education.
Yeah.
It's not because they don't have schools, it's because the road access is so bad that students cannot travel from their kampongs to go to schools. If it rains, the roads will be muddy, and children don't end up going to school. So the dropout rates are very high. Illiteracy rates are also very, very high. I want to just pinpoint the last picture to you, okay? Infrastructure, basic infrastructure is also really bad. So there were times where we're in the kampung and there's no water. So we have to put out a big tank outside and pray for rain to come, right? And when there's rain, it's like everybody in the hostel. So we built hostels in rural Sabah where students will stay there as a means to, going to school. So the schools will be 5 minutes away from these hostels. So we will be actually we'll be chasing after the water. Whoever gets water first will get to bathe first. If you don't have water, then you don't bathe for that day. So water can be cut off anytime. Road access is bad. And the other one is also, as I mentioned, literacy rates are also very low. So the picture that you see on the left is, so the little baby is our second child, Anya, and Anya was born in Sabah. Next to her is actually a 9-year-old boy. Who you don't see in the picture is actually my 3-year-old son sitting on this other side, and I was teaching him ABCs at that time. So I was, going through ABCs and teaching him some spelling and reading, but at the same time, this 9-year-old boy had no clue what ABCs and 1, 2, 3s are. So literally, we had to tutor these children from ground up because there was no access to kindergarten or primary school. So some of them actually enter our hostels at the age of 9 with no pre-primary, pre-elementary studies whatsoever, kindergarten studies, and they're coming in as I'm learning as a kindergarten child at 9 years old. The middle portion is when we will do devotions, and local pastors will go into the hostels and teach them. And on Sundays, we would walk to church. And that's our mode of transport, going to a local church.
So the name of the NGO that we were working for is called Starfish Malaysia Foundation. So we were working with them for 4 years until we left. And so those of you who are familiar, some of your SIBKL's hostels are actually very close to the ones that we operate. So we do network together, and sometimes also we have what we call retreats for the wardens in Sabah. So all over Sabah has probably about 20 odd hostels. So we'll gather all of them together once a year just to pray for them, just to be with them, more like a fellowship, right?
So the last picture that I want to kind of highlight here is that inset picture. Our children in urban areas will go to school in cars, right? Sometimes driven by us, or if we have drivers, our drivers will drop them off. But children in the kampong in rural Sabah would hop into lorries like this and like sardine pack as many people as possible, and that's their mode of transport going to school. It's way better than actually walking in muddy roads, right? If you think about it, at least they have access to education. The last picture I want to show you, which is some of the work that we did in Sabah in the earlier days when we were there, is medical camps, because health access is also very limited, and so many of them don't end up going to clinics, even though they have like underlying problems like diabetes and even heart problems. They don't get checked until it's like really like late stages, and so we'll bring in like doctors and dentists to go in to do medical checks. So yeah, right after that, after 4 to 5 years of working in rural Sabah with the natives, before COVID hit, the Lord had actually already told us like, okay, your time in the rural places is up. It's time to hand over the baton to the natives. And the reason why is because if we don't empower the natives to rise up, to do the work, it will always be somebody from West Malaysia who's doing that, right? And so in the 4 years that we were in the rural areas, we were literally looking for leaders to raise up so that they can continue the work that we were doing. And so the foundation is continuing on, but we're no longer part of it. And so it was a blank canvas. Should we come back to KL or should we stay on in Sabah?
So what we realized with doing such work, right, was that passion takes me a certain limit. So all this that we just shared with you were very much driven by passion. So I'm passionate about helping the next generation, passionate about helping poor people. So it's all driven by passion. But we realize passion has a limit, right? For example, in the middle of the road, I lost my passion, started shouting at God and complaining and everything. So passion sometimes can lead to burnout, right? So for instance, then also we realized that one of our mentors told me that to be a very effective leader, you also, apart from all the spiritual things and passion and what, you also need to be data driven. You need to be driven by data so that you know your work is effective. And then we realized, why don't we have a place where we can have a repository of data about social issues in Malaysia, poverty, migrant issue, refugees here, statelessness in East Malaysia, urban poor, rural poor, all of these things, baby dumping, all of these issues in a single platform, and Malaysians, millennials, especially Gen Zs, can have access to it and consume such information. Not just get smarter, but get smarter in taking action. Find these places. So Wiki Impact was birthed in 2020. Today is about 4 years old, where it's today now become not just a hub for stories, but also a hub for data. Data, you can go to the website, you look at the data portion and everything. You can find where are the B40s in Malaysia. So we tell you where the B40s are. We tell you how far every district is to the nearest school. Can you imagine? We have this data in Malaysia, but it's not mapped out in a interesting or effective way to common layman people like you and I. So we actually have the data to tell how far is Petaling, people from the nearest school to the nearest school, and in Petaling no issue, right? But in East Malaysia, it's more than 9 km to the nearest school. And we map things like that out. So Wiki Impact was birthed, and then we have those of you who like data research, we have 3 reports that we publish annually. The first report is called the Transparency Score of Malaysia's Foundation. So as long as your company has the word Yayasan or Foundation, you'll be there. So Yayasan Generasi Gemilang is there. We track how transparent are they with their information. Do they have a website? Do they have social media? Do they publish their annual report? Do they publish their financial report? So we publish that. Why? Although it's not mandated by the Malaysian government, we realize, we all know this news, right? That people are actually using foundations to siphon money, right? So if there is a quote-unquote watchdog, we're not trying to be a watchdog, but if there is somebody looking at all these reports, maybe Malaysia would climb, right? Then we have, in the center is called Wiki Impact 100, where we highlight 100 change makers every single year, right? Of people who are doing remarkable change in Malaysia. I give you some examples. For example, there is Ustad, somewhere in Lembah Subang, who collects data about all her students in a PPR flat, so that when Hari Raya comes, or a certain festival comes, she know how many households and children are there and how much money to raise to feed them. So that's, to us, that's a change maker. How about, say, for example, a nasi lemak auntie who sells nasi lemak, and every ringgit she collects, 30 cents goes to feeding the homeless. We highlight change makers like that. Right? And the last one, the third one is more corporate. So that we call that Bursa Top 20. So Bursa Top 20 are the top 20 companies in Malaysia with the highest net profit. So top 20 based on net profit. So you got your B-Bank, CIMBs, during COVID days is Top Glove. So this year is our third year's report. We track these 20 companies and how much do they give back to Malaysia, as well as in kind. So for example, in COVID they sponsor masks or computers, right? We read all their annual reports, so we deliberately read 20 annual reports, comb through, and we publish a report like this. And all of these three reports that we do is covered by probably all the mainstream medias every time we publish it. So the reason for doing this is basically to level up the social impact space in Malaysia. 10 years ago, when I tell my dad I work for a startup, he was like, "What is a startup? Why? Today, if your children come and tell you I work for a startup, you'll say, great, cool, Grab, amazing. 10 years ago, if I tell my dad I work for my taxi, he'll be like, what is that? So today, it's the same. If your children can't tell you I work for a charity or an NGO, you're like questioning his life choices or her life choices. But we are doing all these things to elevate the entire industry so that 10, 15 years later, it will be a career of choice, working to help and build our country.
It's a disgrace.
It's a disgrace. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But you would be surprised to know that the top research companies also show that data in the next generation is actually looking for careers with purpose. Yes, they need to be able to pay, but they're looking for just beyond the paycheck as well. And so, there is a space where the next generation has a vision to want to contribute back to society and to be, good citizens of the nation. It's also part of nation building. And so, a year after...
Sorry, just one last point is, our real intention is basically, one of our intention is to make complex issues simple for the millennials and Gen Zers in our country to comprehend. And that's why we actually invest a lot in Instagram and TikTok Reels to explain. So if you go to our Instagram page, currently it's about, I think, 25 on Instagram, maybe 30K followers, all organic, we don't pay a single ad. You go to some of our Reels, they get like 30,000-40,000 views, some up to 100,000 views, because our next gen may not understand poverty, but if they look at our 1 minute reel, they would understand the meaning of poverty. And that's the main reason why we leverage on social media.
And so a year after setting up Wiki Impact, we felt a need for, basically, there is a space, there is a gap within the Malaysian media space for Christian stories, right? A platform where it's non-denominational, anybody from any church can pitch a story and we'll go there and we'll interview the person, we'll write. And the reason why is because there is power in testimonies, and the more we talk about testimonies, the more we spur out faith, right? The church will be stronger. And so a year after Wiki Impact, we really felt that stirring. It's like, can we do something with the media space, like, the Christian media space in Malaysia? And with that burden, again, it was a step of obedience. We're like, how are we going to start this? Where are we going to get the money? How are we going to get a team? And lo and behold, as we just laid down the desires to go and say, Lord, this is a desire or even a burden that you placed on us, bring in the resources. And as we did that, people started coming in, and it wasn't as if like miracle instantly we said yes to God and all the doors open. There was still a need to, an effort to knock on doors and, you know, to put faith into action. And as we did that, Faith Hour was born. And Faith Hour really is to reach again the next generation. How can we tell solid, good faith stories that can spur the next generation to really, you know, end strong, not just start strong, but end strong. Because it's intergenerational. We tell stories of young, old, and you know, anywhere in between. Again, we're quite strong on Instagram as well, trying to reach the next generation with inspiring faith-filled stories.
So back in our church in Skyline SIP, the both of us, we lead the campus and university age group. Yeah. So that's what we do with our church also, right? I think that's all we have actually, Christina.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. All right, so go over to my left. There are so many books out there, and just have a read. Thank you very much, Terence and Deborah. I think it's so, you know, just sitting down there, it's just truly inspiring for me to just hear your story, journey. And, you know, I was just wondering, you know, because you were like at the helm of your career, right? And, you know, besides the Lord, you know, dropping things into your heart, I mean, it is easy for you to make a decision, a single person to make a decision. But for a couple to make a cohesive decision to drop everything and go to Cambodia, what is the pivotal moment for you? You know, how do you arrive at the decision together as a couple?
For us, I think has always been, it has to be a dual decisions, right?
Right.
It cannot be one.
Sure.
Because we don't want to sort of end up in a place where, oh, you make the decision, ma, you know, you are the one who brought me here, ma, right?
Okay.
You get what I mean? So when we speak to young people, especially those who are thinking about relationships and all, so it's not just finding someone who say is a Christian, but also finding someone who sort of would partner with you in life. So I think it goes beyond that.
Yeah, no, I would have to say that he was the patient one, to be honest, because he was ready to go probably like, you know, 2-3 years before I actually said yes. So year on year, we would go for mission trips, short term, about a week to Cambodia. So Cambodia wasn't like a super new place, right? It's a frequent place that we'll go year on year, and we had built relationships there already. Every year after we come back from a mission trip, he's like, are you ready to go or not? Is this the year that we're going? I'm like, go where? It's like, go to Cambodia for a longer stint, maybe 1 year. And every time I would give a very valid reason. I want to travel the world first. You know, we're just building our careers. Can we settle down first? I want to do this, I want to do that. So literally, I think he was very patient to wait about 3 to 4 years. And I told him, I said, in that waiting, I would be seeking God. And until I hear from God and I know and I get a confirmation on my own, then let's go. And so I think it really takes two in this sense to say yes and then mutually go, because we know it's going to be tough.
You know, you were just sharing that you started such wonderful programs in Cambodia, like the literacy center, the volunteer programs that really impact, you know, a lot of people in Cambodia from the pictures that we saw. But the burning question that I have for you, which you answered partially just now, what made you, you know, leave Cambodia for Sabah? I mean, you were just there for 2 years. Probably when you took on the role, you were thinking, hey, I'm going to go, you know, I'll be in Cambodia for a longer time than just 2 years, you know. So were there any challenges or, you know, were there any regrets, you know, in moving from Cambodia to back to Sabah? Not even Kuala Lumpur, but to Sabah. You know, would you be able to share some of your insights on this?
I think regrets, no, if it's a quick one. But we've always been saying this, or even like when we teach about missions, it's not about just going, but it's also knowing when to leave. The danger is that we overstay, and if we overstay, two things can happen. One is relationship between people may not be as strong. Number two, you are taking a platform where God wants somebody else to be. And three, in the case of missions, the locals would then always rely on you. So we, even in East Malaysia, is the same. We make sure that we don't overstay our season, and this may not just mean geographically, it can also mean in an area, in a space where we want to ensure that we do what we can, what God calls us to do, and we must be cognizant about it. And thereafter, if it's time to go, it's time to go, right? Somebody else to take over, and we rejoice with them.
You see, I like what you phrases now, that obedience is not restriction, but obedience is actually release. I think that's really profound, that's truly obedience in action for both of you. I'd like to open up to the floor right now. Any questions from the floor? Anyone have any burning questions to ask Terence and Deborah? Please feel free. Yes, Clayton.
Hi. It seems like it's a life choice of the parents, but what does, you've got two, right? What are your children says about your decision?
100%. Maybe I can just speak into that. Yes, for now, it is our decision to go to Cambodia. But actually, before we even left to Cambodia, we actually told the Lord, is this a decision that is ours to make? What if we have children? And then what will happen to their education and so on and so forth, right? Because there are repercussions to where you stay and the communities that you interact with and everything else. We're very, very cognizant of it. Obviously, we cannot consult a baby, a 3-month-old at a time, and so that decision really had to be from us. But with our parenting style, it has always been about reasoning. So our children have always been in discussions with us, and they are always in the know when it comes to conversations like this. Should we move or should we not move? Should we serve in this ministry or should we not serve in this ministry? And I'll give you an example. So we lead the campus ministry in church in Skyline, and they obviously follow us, right, all the time. We actually have two, not rules, but two sayings for them every time they go into church and they come in with us, right, to church. We'll tell them, send an Enya, PW, okay, PW. And most Christians will think PW is praise and worship, right? And the PW is not praise and worship. The PW is participate and worship. Participate meaning be there 100%. If we are going to be in campus and we're going to have a discussion, then you participate in a way that you understand how to participate. Join in conversations where you think you can join in conversations. Maybe go up to a gogo or jeje, introduce yourself, sit in a conversation and just be part of it, mingle around, right? And then you also have your time to, like, once you hit your quota already, okay, you go and play on your own, right? But participation is very important. It means they're there. They're not in front of their screens, right? The other one is worship. Everything that we do is worship unto God. So whether it is picking up a chair and putting it down and arranging it, that's worship unto God. If it's so Seth has just he's quite a drummer. So if it's playing the drums for a session, that's worship unto God. But that's very obvious worship, right? If it means serving drinks to somebody, that's worship too, right? And so for us, the family involvement is very, very vital in every decision that we make as not just as a couple, but as a family as well.
Yeah, so right now we're just giving you two examples of moving. There were also a couple of occasions where we wanted to leave, as in from Sabah, go back home here in KL. And we did consult them. He was probably around 8 at that time. And we talked to them and we said, hey, we're just thinking about this. Straight away, their first reaction is no. Home is Sabah, right? Home is there. And we had to take because of their friends, my second one was born there. And we had to take that seriously. Not to just say, not so important, daddy and mommy's, work is more important. We have to take that seriously, and that was a very heavy consideration for us to weigh whether should we,
That's wonderful. I think it's so wonderful that you impart such good values to your children and to pray alongside together when you make decisions. Actually, yesterday evening I was looking through Wiki Impact and actually reading it through the wee hours of the morning. I was so intrigued with all the articles, and the issues that was brought forth, I was just thinking, you came from a spectrum of corporate, like your, what do you call that, from urban ventures to rural adventures to live with a mission now, from being corporate to the mission world and back to corporate with a mission. So I think if you would have started Wiki Impact and Faith Hour probably 10 years back, it would be very different from where you started it now, right? So what are the values and knowledge and experience that you brought from the mission field that you impart to these media ventures? Would you be able to share this with us?
Yeah, one clear one is how we listen to communities. Right? If I started 10 years ago, I wouldn't have learned how to listen to communities. I would probably have how I operate missions, how we operate missions 15 years ago is very different from how we do it today. 15 years ago, we were going like as though like, we are doing them a service. After my own studies and my own observation and, going to visit all these rural places, I realized actually, honestly, I have actually more to learn with them, from them. And it doesn't mean if my pathway of having an education is a way out, it doesn't mean their pathway has to be education. So the key thing is to listen. And what do they want, whether do they even have the desire to exit poverty, if you get what I mean, right? Because we think they are poor by looking at them. But, Malaysia, the United Nations measure poverty very different from us. We measure poverty based on what they have. The United Nations, and in fact Malaysia just adopted, measures poverty by multidimensional. So it measures them. So for example, even though you're living in a poor state, but you have access to coal, cooking utensils, they give you points for all these things. If you have access, you're able to go to the nearest school, right? They give you points to all this. So technically, they are above. That's why when in Malaysia, when you read the papers, they say, we are elevating hardcore poverty. Actually, I can believe that, although in your eyes, you may not, but actually, because it depends what metrics you follow. So my point, back to your question, is I think the listening part would be less if I were to start it then, right? The second thing is the network. I wouldn't have the network of the people who I've worked with, in the past.
Any more questions from the floor? Yes, Pastor Joel.
Since everybody's so talking about just now how you shared about how you redefine or God redefined worship to you. So my question is, has missions been redefined for you, and if so, how?
Yeah, so missions definitely has been redefined in a way that oftentimes I grew up as a Christian, right? And so when I see a missionary, that's a missionary, but I don't see myself as a missionary, right? Or I need to be in a rural place or somewhere where it's devastated and I do the work, then I'm a missionary. But I think that has really been reversed in that I see my entire life as a missionary because I'm living a missional life, right? So I can be back here in Kuala Lumpur and I can be working a corporate job, but how can I then be missional in the way that I, maybe deal with my clients, how I repurpose or reposition some of my profits, right? Because we deal with a lot of social enterprises as well. That has definitely changed the way I see missions, because then there is a merge between missionaries in our mindset or in my mindset, how it used to be, versus a missional life where actually all believers are called to live a missional life, right? Where we are serving and having a bigger purpose, a kingdom purpose in everything that we do and lay our hands on. And that would be the biggest mind shift for me.
In fact, I'll just share a quick story. Was that a couple of weeks ago we were with some of our young adults, and I was just asking them just for fun. I said, guys, according to statistics, where do you think the top two most largest harvest field would be in the world? So one say Pakistan, one say Afghanistan, one say North Korea. They were giving all this. I said, no, the top two is your schools and marketplace and your offices. These two. I said, if we all, the Christians in the world, can fulfill our missional call in schools and marketplace, we don't need the traditional missionaries that we are used to.
Thank you. It's a boost to us, workplace and ministry.
That's right, yeah.
We're on the right track, pastors. All right, awesome. Just two more questions to go. Coming back to Wiki Impact and Faith Hour, how do you, moving forward, all right, what do you want to see? How is it going to impact more lives? Where do you want to see, these media ventures in 5-10 years' time? What do you want to see being achieved for these two media ventures?
Maybe I can just quickly speak for Faith Hour. I would definitely love to see, so in the business world, right, we don't like to see competition, right? Oh, another person is, another business that's similar to mine is coming up. Then I need to work harder, and competition is healthy, but it's better if you're a monopoly, which means you get a bigger slice of the cake. But for Faith Hour, at least, I would love to see more media organizations that are faith-based coming up. What that means is that there is a ripple effect, that people want to be talking about faith and faith-based stories. And so that's actually my vision. If I can inspire more people to tell their stories, whether it's through our platform or their own platforms, that's great. Yeah.
And then for Wiki Impact is we have today non-profits foundations who are using our data to plan. So they are using whatever we have released, whatever we produce, whether it's education, they use our data and they'll plan forward for the following year and years to come. So I think for me, if we can do more of that and then share this data freely in an open source way to non-profits and foundations and social enterprises to use it towards planning. I think that's really what we want to contribute to the ecosystem. Yeah.
It's wonderful. Just one last question, for those who have young family, or even those who are young at heart, all right, and still young, all right, who intends to venture into mission field, like what you have done. Yeah, or even young people here who have a heart for mission. What word of advice do you want to give them?
I would say start with where you are. So, I think gone in those days where you enroll yourself in a mission course or, you go and connect with a mission organization and everything. I tell some of, especially those who are into sports, I say, go and be a basketball coach somewhere in Sri Lanka or, in Cambodia. Start with that. Or the doctors, doctors and medical practitioners are a great entry point, right? And then, you do your mission course at the side just to help you with the understanding of the missional theology and stuff like that. But practically, actually, you can enter a lot of all these markets with skill-based, and even of course, with gig work and everything, it's easier entry point. So I would say start with where you are rather than, trying to hit some of these things, then you go to the mission field.
Absolutely. Maybe I can just add with, just start with the first step, right? Perhaps maybe the word volunteer might connote like, it's like, they're starting at entry level. But I would challenge you to say this, because we've spoken to a lot of NGOs, many times they put up on the media or their websites, volunteer for this, where you give out food or you help to pack things. That's very common and it's great, we need all of that. But what they don't put up on the web and they don't tell people about is that they need expertise in the way of maybe, an accountant who has retired and you have all of the, experience of accounting and auditing, right? They need somebody to come in to look at their books for transparency, for auditing, for accountability reasons, but they won't put it on their website. What you need to do is to get to know an organization enough that then you ask them, what exactly are your needs? And then you try to match your skill sets with what they need, right? So it may not be a match at first sight, but if you continue that conversation and you kind of like reach out to various organizations, you will find that match. And the other thing is also with missional work, I truly believe this, that God placed in us something that is very in line with our personality, okay? So for example, I talk about poverty, it may not move your heart. But let's say if I talk about animal welfare or environmental issues, it may move your heart even more, right? And so the causes that you champion they don't necessarily need to be it doesn't need to be uniform. What I'm saying is that God designed us uniquely and individually, and certain causes tug at our hearts more than they do to other people. And so find what tugs at your heart and then run for it, run with it, and try to be a solution in any way, form, or shape possible. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's give a hand to Terence and Deborah. Thank you so much.